Yes. So let's start the ball rolling. So please welcome Sunity, who is going to open the I will tell you when you have 3 minutes and when you have 1 minute. Yeah?
Thank you, Professor Watson, and thank you all of you for being here to start this conversation. We started off trying to reroute a highway, and I think we have rerouted our imagination instead. While other aspects of this issue will be ventilated by my fellow panelists, I want to focus on what it means for us as a society. I can't remember the last time that civil society stirred itself, got together and presented a cogent, rational position and forced the government to sit down around a table and pay attention. And for that reason, I consider this a triumph. It will be an even greater triumph if Dr. Kubal Singh comes off his fast, his strike today, because we would not have had to pay the ultimate price for something like that to happen. And I think we will know shortly, because I understand those conversations are currently taking place. But our habit has been to protest. That is our history. We have 3 options having elected governments. We protest, we go to the courts, and we know what that involves, or we wait until elections. And that is because the transformation that has been required from moving from the colony to the independent nation remains unfulfilled and incomplete. And so we still have not, and I don't want to go into the discussion too much about our weak institutions, but it is at moments like this that the talk about weak institutions becomes so apparent that you no longer have to explain it to people. We would have had strong institutions if there were methods for resolution between communities, individuals, major sections of society. If there were ways that would have allowed us to diffuse a matter like this, then we would have known that we have institutions that when there's a difference with government, any citizen or any group, that there were means of resolving it. We can see clearly now what is meant when people say that we do not have the institutions to support democracy. Elections are simple enough, and I think that point is well made. What happens, therefore, when you come to acknowledge that? Then you start to see the role. In the process of building institutions, you have to build citizens. It is a citizen, it is the independent citizen that will give rise to institutions ultimately. I don't think you can invent a whole heap of institutions and announce them tomorrow and that they will function in the way they should function, simply because who will you put? But the same individuals right now who have all kinds of capabilities but do not have a clear understanding and confidence in their role and their responsibility. And invariably, our institutions, until we evolve that citizen, will always be compromised by individuals who are parting down the middle on one side or the other. And so, the more intelligent people you gather up and put into government, is the less you are getting intelligence working for you. And that has to do not with education, it's in terms of schooling, it has to do with confidence. And the idea of, you can't invent a confident citizen. You gain confidence when you see often enough that people risk things and survive. And I'm not talking about the risk in the sense of Dr. Kubal Singh's risk. I'm talking about professional risks. And I'm very happy to be having this conversation in the University of the West Indies, because this is the place that process should be beginning. This is the place that the society has invented for itself to garner expertise, to feed into the wider society. And I'm very sorry to have to say that what we see from the University of the West Indies is expertise for sale. When the society is turning to the University of the West Indies and turning to the professional class for assistance, for guidance, for capabilities, it is finding interest-loaded positions. And maybe when you have a dysfunctional position, dysfunctional society, everybody wants to fill that vacuum, and therefore everybody's available to be prime minister. And maybe if you had a functional political system, we could all relax and go and do the things that we are good at. And we won't all be having to be pounding pavements and saying, I want to form a party. Everybody wants to be. And that probably has to do with the dysfunctional nature of the political system. But I do think that professionals have to bring greater assistance, not to political parties, but to the public interest. This is not to say that a political party may not express the views that are yours, and you may find common interest, and therefore, but the unconditional nature, and I want to refer to the People Partnerships Manifesto. Because when you go through that manifesto, apart from the realization that almost none of the controversial projects and developments within the life of this government, or in fact almost any government, never find any recognition in the manifesto. You go to the manifesto and tell me which of the things that the government has actually embarked on that is truly significant is in the manifesto. Committees that have been promised, you have got them. Endless numbers of committees populated by a lot of people from the University of the West Indies, which actually are accruing in no great value to the country. But you will not find a position on the Fortin Highway, which is the single largest infrastructural project in that manifesto. You will find, in fact, you will find a very lovely statement about the environment and about the need to review the NEP, the National whatever plan, environment plan, in order to ensure that not a single piece of mangrove is destroyed. That is in the manifesto. You will also find a commitment to strengthen the film company and the entertainment company. And what are we hearing now? We're hearing about the dissolution into a creative industries company that is not mentioned in the manifesto. The point being made, however, is how do you, and we do it with every single government. So the question, I am not focusing on the political parties, I am actually focusing on the citizenry. How do you take responsibility for championing a political party, seeing it go into government, seeing it implement a course of action that is at odds with what was promised, and do nothing about it and continue supporting it? Well, I can tell you how. It's because you didn't pay attention to the manifesto. We did not pay attention to manifestos generally. And so manifestos are designed to say everything that we want. They are not put to the test of exactly what are the details in that particular position that you have outlined there. We are so easy to mama guide that you just have to use the right words and give us the right sentence, and we're going along and we're saying yes. And when the party deviates from that, we are already invested. And so we cannot disconnect. And I think these are the issues that we need to consider at this moment, because very soon we will be tested again, whether we are waiting for the full 5 years or before. Are we going to simply be a population that is happy with sloganeering, happy to not question? And I again come back to the point that it is the University of the West Indies that the information ought to be residing, and I'm sure it is residing. The number of the research projects and all kinds of things that go on here, and don't necessarily find their way into the public, and that's why I have to commend SALISES for this, because this is public engagement. That is, it's where a university locates itself. We're going to very soon, I saw, I think in this morning's newspapers, a statement that a draft constitution bill, or I don't know if it's a bill, paper, will soon be made available. And I think this is your moment. If we have learned if we are learning anything from this matter involving the Fortin Highway, it is to recognize the absence of avenues for a population, for an electorate, for people to take control of the process of government, as opposed to saying that government is the X number of people who sit there. Because my guess is that this exercise will be precisely like all exercises that we have engaged in. What is wrong is not what is in the Constitution, it is the perspective from which our constitutions have been written, and it is from the perspective of power. It is not from the perspective of people. Because if you are talking about a constitution, it has to be us trying to figure out how do we structure the society and how do we structure our institutions, including the executive, in such a way that the will of the people is expressed right through that process. And I don't see how you can't start with the smallest unit, which is, first of all, the individual. There's a responsibility on the individual to be clear about your interest. And I find that that is the source of so many problems. Where exactly do you stand in relation to anything? Where do you stand in relation to the outsourcing of the healthcare? It doesn't matter if you support it or you don't support it, but you have to know, where do you stand? Where do you stand in relation to how much aggregate can be taken from the northern range? But the important thing about having to decide where you stand is that you have to have information, because you don't just say, I stand here. And therefore, that is the beginning of the process of creating a responsible citizen. Because when you realize you don't have the information, then you ask yourself, well, where is that information and why can't I have it? Then you make a demand on the media, you make a demand on your representative, on the information agencies. And an informed citizen becomes an informed member of a community, and then an informed member of a region, an informed member of the country. And when you are informed, you will not have to get to the point that Dr. Kubla Singh has had to take us, for us to pay attention to the single most largest infrastructural project in this country. The great value of this exercise, as I said, it was a rerouting of the imagination. We have suddenly woke up and said, but wait, you mean all of this is going on? How many people were paying attention? Look what a man had to do. But it comes back with the extent to which we can shake off our history as passive observers to our lives. We have to be present. When our history is written, we have to say we were there. And the evidence that we were there is there. This, that, and the other. I'm more or less ready to wrap up. Right? But the one message I would leave you with is the legacy that we have inherited. You know, if you were to go back to your great grandparents and imagine the investment that they had in the future, the investment of hope they put into this country, to be able for us to be here today. And what they have yielded is what I call the consumer generation. Our generation is taking and taking and taking. I don't think we can hold anybody else responsible for that but ourselves. If we were different kind of citizens, we would have different kinds of leaders. And so that is my very simple contribution today, because I think what Dr. Kubla Singh has shown, as I wrote this weekend, is the power of the individual. If we were to tap our own power, what might be possible? And maybe if we did that, we would never have to have this scenario again, where man has to go to that extreme to alert the rest of the citizenry. Thank you.